The regular meeting of the Southern Shores Town Council for December the 2nd, 2014 is now in session. Please join the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Council, in a moment I'll ask you to approve the agenda, but first I'd like to amend the agenda to remove item 3A from the consent agenda for tonight's meeting. We'll delay the discussion on that until February meeting in all probability. A motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. In a moment, we're going to have an opportunity for you to have your public comment period. Obviously, I want to give you the opportunity to express your viewpoint and say what you want to say. I'd ask you do it in a manner that maintains the decorum of the meeting, showing respect for the other people in the meeting room, as well as respect for your counsel. I will engender and always reciprocate that same respect back to you. As usual, we have 3 minutes. I've asked Councilman Lahan to be our timekeeper tonight. He will advise you when you've reached the 2.5-minute mark, and they'll give you time to wrap up your comments, hopefully, before the 3-minute time overtakes you. Thank you. The first person that's asked to speak tonight is Mr. Ed Cowell. I'd ask that you come to the podium, introduce yourself, and give us your address. Thank you.
Ed Cowell, 134 Beach Street Trail in Southern Shores. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'm not here tonight to speak about trees. However, transparency is, I think, judging by what I see on TV about Ferguson, is an overused word right now. However, a friend of mine who lives across the canal called me several weeks ago and wanted to know that I realized that a proposed bike trail was coming through the middle of my front yard. Needless to say, this is the first I had heard about it, and somebody was, even though something may be a long-time plan or just some thought process, I think they should at least notify the neighbors whose property is going to impact. As it turned out, it was about 40 feet into my front yard. And also had been a bridge across the canal, which might interfere with some people who use the boats. A lot of boats actually come through at night. So unless the bridge would have some sort of lighting on it, it could constitute a hazard. But I just like to, when somebody's be affecting the citizens of the town, I think the council should let people know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Debbie Newberry.
Hi, my name is Debbie Newberry, and just for a brief background here, I'm 267 Dogwood Trail, married to Fred Newberry back there. And I have a couple engineering degrees. I just wanted to point that out, and I work for the Environmental Protection Agency. And so needless to say, I'm very interested in the environment around here, and I'm very interested in the maritime forest, especially that in my yard and around me. I have a lot of things that I wanted to cover, but since there's not much time, I just wanted to concentrate on two of the benefits of the maritime forest and two major concerns I have associated with these benefits. The first is soil stabilization, and I wanted to point out a perfect example of some issues that we potentially have where we removed the trees on Dogwood Trail. In there, it's a very steep area, and you may have noticed that we have a lot of washout going on there. I thought it had stopped, but I checked it again tonight, and it's still washing out into the road. And there's also washing down below. My major concern there is the fact, besides it doesn't look all that great, is the fact that we're actually making a potential problem with the roadway there and undercutting that roadway. I don't know if there's additional plans to take care of this issue. I'm sure there must be, because I can't believe that you'd be leaving it just like that. My second item is the protection that these trees provide to wind damage in the area. And I want to point out and make sure that everybody knows it's just not protecting us, the people that are in the maritime forest. It's protecting all of Southern Shores. All aspects of it. It's why the island in this area is as wide as it is. It's because of those trees. They protect us from the wind. It has increased the size of the dunes that we have above us. So everybody is gaining from this. And my concern here comes in any tree that we remove, the trees that are left have to take the wind that that particular tree was taking. So when we remove a tree, everything else has to take it. There's more stress coming onto those trees. And as we remove more and more trees, there's going to become a time that those trees that are left can't handle it. So my concern here is that we need to have something in place, some kind of ordinance to protect these trees, to understand what it means every tree we take out, because it is a major issue. So I ask that we consider that, and the council considers having some sort of ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Newberry.
Well, I guess you get to hear from both of us tonight, 2 in 1. At any rate, I'm Fred Newberry. I'm on 267 North Dogwood Trail, and I'm here to talk about trees again. And just to recap some of the points I made at the last council meeting, I just want to reiterate, Southern Shores is in a maritime forest. There's no doubt about that. There are a lot of benefits of a maritime forest. I went over those. I'll go over them real quickly again. It's a refuge for wildlife. It provides a storage capacity for groundwater. It stabilizes the soil. It improves air quality. And one of the most significant benefits, it does protect against wind damage. There's no doubt that the high elevations in Southern Shores are a result of trees protecting them from the wind. Without the trees, there would be a lot more wind erosion than there is. And not to mention, they're aesthetically very desirable. This is a great place to live, primarily because of the wildlife, the trees, and everything that goes with it. I want to point out one thing, Mayor, that you said in the town newsletter, and I thought it was good and it's important, and I'll read it. Our streets, the street right-of-ways, the canal bottoms, and our bridges all belong to our town, and our citizens may utilize and enjoy them. As members of your elected town council, we are charged to preserve and properly maintain these infrastructure items for the benefit of all the town's citizens. But I think there's one more thing that should be added to that, and that is, as members of our elected town council, you should also be charged with properly maintaining the maritime forest for the benefit of all of the town's citizens. And how do you do this? There are some best practices. Just go over them very briefly. One is maintain the town's trees. Stop clear cutting. Don't take trees down unnecessarily. Maintain narrow roads and streets. We don't need widened streets here. And there's an added benefit of a narrow street. A narrow street deters people speeding. Impervious surface should be minimized. In other words, stop unnecessary paving. We don't need wider streets. We don't need curbs. We need to maintain our open natural areas, and we need to
30
encourage.
seconds.
Okay, thank you. We need to minimize herbicide use. And in the near term, and this is my last point, the council should take some action to establish a working group composed of residents and town staff to develop a tree ordinance in Southern Shores. The ordinance will apply not only to the town's improvement projects, but to homeowners as well. And people say it can't be enforced. That's not true. It can be treated just like enforcement
That's
for
3 minutes.
building permits. So if you do nothing, that's unacceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you.
Tina Upurdy.
Good evening, I'm Tina Upurdy. I live at 157 Wax Myrtle Trail. On the subject, pardon me, I'm not used to speaking in public too often. On the subject of neighbors helping neighbors, David Stick, the first mayor of Southern Shores, and the son of Frank Stick, our founding father, learned that it sometimes required the confidence to speak up, to write, to get others to rally around a cause, and to be willing to separate what might benefit one personally from actions taken at the expense of others. I'm a member of the TAP Steering Committee. I'm a co-chair. I never thought I'd be doing this, and I really can't believe it. It's troubled me greatly that I feel that we can no longer trust our elected council members and town leadership. I don't think you're bad people. I think you may be misguided, maybe misinformed, or overwhelmed. Leadership isn't easy. I've been there. There are tough decisions. You have to consider all the angles and all the interest, all the stakeholders in the matter, and try to do the best you can to do the right thing. And that can be a daunting challenge. We as TAPS will continue to ask questions, examine the facts, and search for solutions. I implore each of you to step back, examine our current state of affairs, think about the consequences your actions have on your friends and neighbors, our friends and neighbors, the taxpayers and residents, and you too. Do not react with emotion, but rather with calm and reason. Nothing is ever so right than saying, I was wrong, I made a mistake. It's not too late to preserve Southern Shores. Nor is it too late to rebuild relationships. Who benefits? Ask yourself, ask your neighbors, ask your friends, and in some cases, you may have to ask your enemies. Who benefits? Please stop, take a breath, slow down, communicate openly and with integrity, listen, think independently, so that we, as a united force, can work through our challenges, realize the treasure we have in what we know as Southern Shores, and bring her into the future together. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tommy Carroll.
Good evening, Tommy Carroll, 77 East Dogwood Trail. Just a couple of points tonight. I think the citizens of, especially the citizens surrounding Dogwood Trail and the people from Fairway would love to have some input into the replanting of the intersections that are underway at this time. And I know the mayor has asked Jim Collins, I believe.
Jim Connor.
I'm sorry, Jim Connor. So we don't want to step on his toes, but we would like some of that input, at least to look at the plans and to see, to have some input. We would ask that. I would also ask at some time, is there a time frame for the Yopon Trail posting of the plans for that road? I know the survey is on the road, but the final plans, when they plan to be posted. At the time you addressed rumors, Mr. Mayor, there's the rumor that on Dogwood, moving north, right before you would take the right on the East Dogwood, that there's going to be removal of that stop sign. Bad idea. Please address that rumor. And on the ordinance, the Newberries made my next point very easy. I've done fairly extensive research, and as Ben, you pointed out, you didn't know about any ordinances there, and there aren't widespread. But I have found a couple, at least couple, I think 3 now in the country that have ordinances against clear cutting, against cutting trees on private property based on erosion, stormwater control, and water quality. I've spoken to them. The town attorney has made himself available to Ben if we get to that point. I'm going to get you a copy of that ordinance. If you don't mind, I'll do it by email. Is that okay? And absolutely enforceable. Private property, non-private property, to whatever extent, through a permit process. So we can get there if we want to as a town. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Carroll. Next speaker is Andrew Darling.
Well, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak, Mr. Mayor. And Tina, Tommy, I'm going to kind of reinforce a couple of points that you made, I think. One of them that Tina said is slow down, and Tommy said let's have some inputs on what we're doing going forwards. And I've been looking at the Tall Pine Bridge. Interestingly, I'm not a civil engineer, I'm an electronics engineer, but I've studied the bridge inspection reports, a bridge inspector's reference manual, the Federal Highway Preservation Manual, and after any more reading, I can probably become a bridge inspector, start a new career. Bridges are very interesting things. Most of them are designed for 50 years, but most last considerably longer. The Tall Pine Bridge was built in 1970, so it's not at end of life yet. There are several characteristics that combine to make up the analysis or appraisal of a bridge, and they're nicely summarized in a couple of charts, one of them here from the Federal Highway Manual. If you cross-reference these charts with the structural inventory and appraisal that was done on the bridge, which I'm sure you've all seen. Actually, I didn't bring that with me here. It's on my chair. The bridge ratings are quite good. In fact, the bridge is quite safe. The crumbling surface that you mentioned last time is actually superficial, but it does need some, surface repair. The bridge is rated as functionally obsolete, and that generally means that the bridge was built to standards that are not in use today. And so the bridge has been cited for replacement. Now, I have a concern about the estimate of 6 to 9 months of disruption. It could be completely wrong. After all, resurfacing the Wright Memorial Bridge is now taking probably twice as long as it was intended, and Juniper Trail Bridge is certainly not worry-free even now. So my first question is, where did the estimate of 6 to 9 months come from? And speaking of functionally obsolete, there is actually a Mycenaean bridge on the Peloponnese near Athens that was built in 1300 BC. It was designed for chariots, so it's definitely functionally obsolete. But it's not at end of life, and it is being used continuously today. So
30
the question
seconds.
is, I'm sorry?
30 seconds.
Okay. So the question is, although it's functionally obsolete, does it need to be replaced in a hurry? I would like to see us slow down a little bit, get some inputs from the townspeople, taps if you like, and see if we can minimize the impact of this bridge replacement to the town. After all, everybody's impacted. Our mail carriers are impacted, our trash removal's impacted, and if Grandma gets run over by a reindeer next Christmas,
That's 3 minutes.
she'll be having trouble getting to emergency services. That's it, Larry.
Thank you. Mr. Van Giesen.
Mr. Mayor. I'm Joe Van Giesen, 228 North Dogwood. I'm going to speak a little bit about the procurement process. I've mentioned it in my comments last time, and I want to thank the town manager for bringing me up to speed on the procurement policies. I understand that they were updated in April, and therefore the procurement, the informal process that was used for Dogwood intersection and Fairway did conform to your policies and procedures. However, I would like to note that that change in April adopted the state regulations as the framework and incorporates them in our procurements. And the state regulation puts a threshold of $500,000 on a project before it's required to go through a formal bid process. Now, I understand also that most of the other towns in the area also have adopted that or incorporate that in their procedures, so we're not that much different from the other towns. On the other hand, I'm noticing that all of our construction work, all of our road work is getting done by the same contractor almost exclusively, and we're almost always only getting 2 bids, and I don't understand why the second contractor ever bids anymore because he never gets an award. That's kind of curious. And I would encourage you to try to use, either adopt a different policy or just not necessarily conform to that and use the formal bid process more often. Bundle your projects together so you can increase the scope of the bids if there's a way to do that so that it's a larger project. Advertise in more different areas. Go to Rocky Mount, go to Elizabeth City, go to Norfolk if you have to, and see if you can get more bids, get more competition, and possibly link with other towns if they're going to be doing construction projects and jointly bid those. So you get a large bid, you can encourage more competition. And with regard to competition, I think the lack of competition not only is likely costing us money, which is one primary concern, but it's also possibly diminishing the quality of the work. It looks like there's a lot of remedial work done on the several projects that I'm aware of. There's at least 3 or 4 which have required remedial work in the last year or 2. And again, always by the same contractor. Now, if we keep giving the same contractor awards after poor performance on previous awards, where's the incentive to improve his performance? So I would encourage you to get a little creative. I've offered some suggestions. I'm sure there are better ways to do this. And we appreciate seeing any kind of new approach that would save us money and increase the quality of the projects. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close public comment. Council, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Staff reports, Town Planner, Mr. Haskett.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have a brief report for you tonight for the month of November. There were 10 zoning permits issued, 21 building permits issued, and that consisted of 2 new single-family dwellings, 1 demolition, 1 addition, 2 additions or remodels, 1 remodel, 3 accessory structures, and 11 others. There are currently 16 single-family dwellings under construction in Southern Shores, and the total amount of fees collected in November was $13,227.25. With respect to the planning board, there will be a planning board meeting on December the 15th. There are 2 applications that the board will be reviewing. One is a site plan amendment application for the Southern Shores Crossing Shopping Center to create a new entrance off of NC 12 north of the Southern Shores Realty office. The second application is a rezoning request of the lot north of Southern Shores Realty, which I believe is located at 11 Ocean Boulevard. And that request is to rezone that lot from RS1 residential to C commercial to allow for the recombination of those lots to connect to the shopping center for that proposed entrance. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Wes. Any questions for him?
I don't have any.
Thank you.
And I'll just note that the information for the December 15th planning board meeting has been posted on the town's website and shared on the town's Facebook page as well, so anyone can go and look at the plans and related documents.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
Our Police Chief, David Cole.
Good evening. Police Department's report for the month of November 2014. The officers responded to 806 calls for service. Some of the breakdown, as you can see, 12 of those incidents, which were actually crimes that were reported, officers made 5 criminal arrests. They handed out 26 written citations, another 44 written warnings. And we also had 3 ordinance violations. One was noise-related, the other were 2 parking. And we had 3 motor vehicle accidents that we responded to. Some of the breakdown of the 806 calls for service, 189 of those were business checks, 117 were residence checks. We had 15 mutual aid. That was between Town of Ducks Police Department and the Kittiawah Police Department. We assisted both of those. Officers also conducted 38 traffic direct. Most of those were at the school. We had 12 suspicious condition reports. We responded to 18 alarms, 72 traffic stops, and we had 168 extra patrols. Any questions?
How did that compare to last November?
I knew you'd ask me. It's a little bit less than it was last year. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's probably about 75 or so less call for service-wise.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Cole. Our next presenter is our Fire Chief, Ed Limbacher.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
For the month of November, the fire department responded to a total of 30 calls for service. And it breaks down fairly simply like this: 1 fire, 23 rescue or dairy EMS assists, 1 hazardous condition, no fire, 1 service call, 1 good intent call, and 3 false alarm or false calls. Anybody have any questions?
Counsel?
False alarm, what prompted that?
The one that I can think of right off the top of my head was the lady was resetting her smoke detectors and didn't know how to do it, so she put the batteries in one and all 11 started going off, so she couldn't figure it out. So we spent the better part of maybe 2 hours fixing it for her, so it was fine.
Okay.
But that's generally false alarm, or it's, set up for some cooking, they burn something on the stove or something like that usually.
So it's really a call for help.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they're here for, though, so that's fine.
Ed,
All right?
Thank you.
yes, has the flushing the fire hydrants been started or completed?
We're completed, we're done.
You are done?
Yep, everything went fine this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome, thank you.
We have no reports from our town boards tonight. We have no old business, so we're going to get right into the new business portion of the meeting. I need to have the town manager and police chief take over for the tab A.
Thank you,
Tab 2,
Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
sorry.
That's item 7A on the agenda, and I refer to tab A in your book, which is a town organization chart. This is a recommendation to the council for the creation of a first sergeant from one of the 3 line sergeants that are shown on the organizational chart. This is proposed to you for designation of the new classification only. All the budget matters that pertain to this will be handled within the existing budget, so there's no budget impact on doing this. As you know, there are 3 line sergeants now in positions. This move, if you were to approve this, would designate one of those line sergeants as a first sergeant who would have enhanced duties. And I've asked Chief Cole, and I'm going to defer to him to kind of describe those extra duties to you so there's clear understanding about the new position. Chief Cole.
Thank you. Just to give you an idea, the first sergeant would be responsible for the immediate supervision of the corporal, our new school resource officer, which we've been awarded, the investigator. He's also oversees immediately the administrative assistant for any problems. And there'll be other added tasks onto this first sergeant, the governor's highway safety projects. He's also the lead investigator and would also be the evidence technician for all of our crime scenes and any evidence that has been accumulated. And as you know, with the retirement of Lieutenant Terry with over 30-some years, a couple of the new sergeants are what I refer to as junior sergeants. And he will also pretty much oversee and assist the lieutenant in their job function as sergeants. If I can entertain any other questions, comments?
Have you appointed the person yet, or is that still being discussed?
I
We
can't discuss
cannot.
that with personnel.
Okay.
If you make this classification tonight, we could make that, that appointment very quickly.
Okay.
Can't designate somebody until we have the position.
Okay, just asking.
So do you need a motion or something from this, or?
Yes, ma'am. The council, if you so desire to follow the recommendation, you would need to move that the first sergeant be created as a new classification from one of the existing sergeant positions.
I would make that motion, and I guess I would add to it that the reason I would do that willingly is because having such a small department as we do, one of the ways you also help people stay and grow is to have some way for them to make movement and grow. So having that incentive out there is very important, I think.
Yeah, but, and that's been my philosophy for a long time, especially in a small department. You have limited growth, and
Right.
we have an exceptional group of officers. We're very fortunate, and it's important that they have something to strive for.
Right.
And so thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I made the motion.
I understand.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Council, we have a motion on the table that we need to consider. Do I have a second to Mrs. Hess's motion? Thank you, David. Any discussion?
No, I have none.
Just to amplify a little bit on what Mrs. Hess said, I think, and what Chief Cole said, we do have I think, a very fine group of police officers, and I think if we can incentivize them to stay with us, we should make every effort to do that. And I would say that's an important thing we have to consider. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's made and carried. Thank you. You can announce the next meeting, Chief, if you'd like.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interject one quick thing, following up what the chief said, if I could. Next month's agenda, I would propose to you that the agenda would have the creation of the school resource officer on this org chart, plus the corresponding budget amendment that would pay for that with the grant and the town's match as a position. So that'll be coming to you in January, just in time for school to start.
Thank you, Peter. The recommendation of the Finance Committee, Budget Amendment Number 5, Councilmember Holland.
Okay, tab 3 in your booklet is a memo from the Finance Committee, and for everybody don't know, that Finance Committee is made up of the Mayor Bennett, Budget Officer Bonnie Swain, not the Budget Officer, Finance Officer, Budget Officers, the Town Manager, and myself. We met on the 24th of November with the purpose of looking at what our debt load was at this point and what rate of interest that we're paying on that debt. And so based on the current interest rates of both the town funds on deposit and the existing loans, we didn't see any advantage of continuing to pay that debt load. So on there, you'll see in the memo, there's two different scenarios. One is just to pay the canal portion off, which at this point is $1,216,191, carrying a rate of 1.72%. There's a second recommendation to pay off not only the additional or the canal debt, but also 3 police vehicles. One is carrying a rate of 1.49, another's 1.24, another's 1.34. So if we just paid the canal off from our undesignated fund balance, we would have a balance in there of $3,272,000. And if we include the police vehicles, we'd have $3,124,000. Our interest that we're earning on our investment is something like 0.01%. So we just feel that our recommendation is go ahead and retire this debt. And if we do it by the 19th of December, there will be no prepayment penalty on the canal debt. So that will, the elimination of the debt from the budget in the amount of, it will eliminate about $318,500 per year. So the committee is bringing to you, recommending to you that we satisfy the canal debt along with the 3 police vehicles.
Thank you, Leo. I appreciate that. I'm going to add just a couple of comments. The previous town councils had agreed over the years that the unassigned fund balance, which is basically your emergency kitty, it's where you go when you have a major storm or major catastrophe like a Hurricane Sandy up in the Jersey coast. Council traditionally had tried to carry a unassigned fund balance of just under $2 million. About 5 years ago, the council decided to let that fund balance grow primarily from our shared tax revenues we get from our sister communities through the county. And that fund balance has now grown to well over $4 million, 4.7, $4.8 million. 4.4 million. Thank you, Leo. And our finance committee met and looked at that and thought, well, we had this extra fund balance money. Why not take a portion of that and apply it to our debt, essentially eliminate virtually all of our town debt. And since the money we have at $4.4 million is not earning very much interest, we're better off to reduce the debt where we're paying interest. And we deliberated over this. We'll still have a number in the $3.2 million range in reserve for contingencies or for emergencies. And we felt it was an appropriate recommendation or suggestion to council to consider that.
And just one other thing, it probably would improve our credit/bond rating as well. And we were fortunate as the hurricane season ended here on Sunday, but we've been pretty fortunate. And one of these days we may not be as fortunate if we have a Category 4. Hopefully, God, not a 5. But may need some funds because FEMA does not pay very quickly. We're still getting reimbursements, I believe, Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, of about 3 years ago, the storm we had then. So we've got to be self-sufficient to get ourselves through something like that. Hopefully we won't have one. But I'm one of not having to, I'm not one that believes in carrying a lot of debt. I mean, it's good, but I think in this particular instance, we need to move ahead and pay it off.
Thank you, Leo. Hurricane Isabel, which happened, 2003? Was about $750,000 cleanup cost. And that was basically out of pocket until we were reimbursed by FEMA for that money, which was a number of years. So it's just something we think the Finance Committee felt was appropriate to go ahead and address that now and keep a pretty good reserve in place, but also eliminate the debt. Anyone else have any questions about this, Larry?
Yes, has our auditor looked at this number,
Yes,
and they're okay with?
she's fine with it. Am I correct? The auditor? Yes. Yeah, she addressed it after last month's meeting.
Yes, David.
Questions. When you indicate virtually all debt, is that not all of those things that we're indebted for?
The agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to build the culvert bridge at Trinity and Juniper as you know, was a joint venture between DOT and the town, and they basically the state cash flowed that. Our payback on that is legally considered debt. So that's the last thing we're holding, that the audit will show as technically being debt. The rest of it will be gone if the council does authorize payment.
The mayor's correct, it virtually eliminates.
Yes. Yeah, it's not 100%, it's 99.9.
Notice I said virtually.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get clear on. The other thing was with this after the payoff, 3.124? Okay, what percentage of our operating budget is that?
54.
54,
Yes, sir, 54%.
okay.
So what you're doing is painting the worst-case scenario. If we don't get any more money in, it'll last a half a year.
Yeah, a half a year would be good.
That's a good question.
I just want to be clear.
No,
on
you're a good
those
question.
two items. That's enough, that's it.
You looking for a motion?
Well, I invite a motion, sure.
Okay, I move that we approve this resolution, or budget amendment number 5.
Number 5A.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Mayor, it's 5A and 5B, excuse me.
5A and 5B.
I'm sorry, I should have flipped to the next page. I got it. 5A and 5B. Do I have a second? That motion? Larry? Thank you, Larry. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion's made and carried. The next item on the agenda is the consideration and possible adoption of calendar year 2015 council and council meeting schedule, resolution number 2014-12-01. I think Mrs. Hess had some thoughts about that.
Was this my, okay, I'm sorry.
It's your turn. Yes, I'm sorry. You told me you had some thoughts about
No,
that.
I only had one comment or suggestion is included in this calendar are the committee meetings throughout the year, which is the Capital Improvement Committee, the Planning Committee, Finance Committee, and Public Safety Committee. So at some future meeting, and it maybe could be one of our scheduled retreats, I think we ought to review the membership on those committees and look at the appointments, just so we're all clear on who's on what and where we are. It's nothing that we have to do tonight, but I think it would be good to put it on an agenda item.
Thank you, Jody. Anyone else have thoughts about this schedule you'd like to share with me or share with us?
No, I don't have any.
In that case, I'd ask for a motion that we approve Resolution 2014-12-01, the council meeting schedule for 2015.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, David. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion's made and carried. The next item on the agenda was the appointment of one of our council members to the Dare County Tourism Board. Mrs. Hess has been on that board for 2 terms, which is a total of 4 years, and her term expires into December. The deputy clerk for Dare County asked the town to provide them a list of 3 nominees for that position, and each nominee was to select their first, second, or third choice. It got kind of cumbersome, but we all did that. 3 of us, Councilman LaHan, myself, and Councilman Holland. And Councilman Holland was chosen. Must have been very competitive. He was chosen as our tourism board representative for the next 2 years. So I'm pleased to report that, and I know he's proud to be there.
Another load on the plate.
Yeah, one more job. That kind of wraps up the first part of our agenda. I now call on the town manager his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My report for the December meeting tonight, just happy to report to you that the capital improvement for Pintail Court is now complete, finished up today. I also wanted to note to you that we're proceeding with discussions about 3 small areas for right-of-way acquisition for the Tall Pine Bridge improvement, replacement project. And also want to remind you that hopefully the final plans will be here by the end of December for you to consider in January. We've had to go ahead and start discussions about the right-of-way acquisition. There are 3 small areas, 2 of which would be temporary, where there would be temporary work performed on the bridge, and so it would be needed to access those. And then there would be 1 spot where there's a potential for a permanent acquisition. And all these would be in the form of easement, proposed easements. Again, they're small enough to be, one being 240 square feet is the largest, so they're very small areas outside the town's right-of-way. I did want to also report to you that the work at the culvert bridge at Juniper and Trinity is now complete. As you recall, we reported that there would be more compaction there, which the contractor did, and a different contractor than actually who paved for DOT the last time, and the paving has been completed today. So hopefully that will be it for a while for that particular culvert bridge. And I will say that the voids at the 4 o'clock position and the 7 o'clock position of the culvert is where the compaction challenges occurred on the bridge. And I'm not an engineer, but I'm told that's not uncommon for a culvert pipe like that if it does not settle right the first time. And of course, there was a repair done after the first time, but this one was completed today, and it looks good. So I invite you to travel over that. The Duckwoods Drive repair that we have talked about for the last 2 or 3 meetings, that is now underway as of today, with the slurry concrete being used within the base as proposed by the engineering firm that the town hired for that to study it. Also wanted to just in response to one of the comments, there are no plans being developed for Yopon Trail at this point. Yes, the survey the right-of-way survey has been completed, and as the documents are developed, we put them online. That is online. We did have a citizens meeting with the residents there on November 12th. It was attended by a good portion of the citizens, and I will say that during the discussions, of course, that meeting was purely for looking at the existing survey and its impact on that particular street. There are a lot of challenges with the right-of-way being beside the canal bulkhead, and so that was the purpose of the meeting. And we did assure the residents at that particular meeting that based on the calculations, both the town engineer and myself assured them that an entranceway could be reworked, rebuilt, and not impede upon the existing tree that's at the entrance. Hopefully that will be the case for many years if the rebuild is done. We did tell them that, and I feel confident in the engineer's calculations that an entranceway can be developed to the north of that tree. It would produce a situation where the stop bar for outgoing traffic would have to be further to the west to get a more clear line of sight. So that'll be the one trade-off to the tree remaining for that particular entranceway. I did want to report back to you, as directed at the last meeting. I have had discussions with the Division I traffic engineer about the possibility of no left turns on US 158 onto South Dogwood. We're basically in discussions, and I've not heard anything definitive back from him yet. DOT is preparing for their December 15th meeting at Jarvisburg Elementary School on the 15th at 7 o'clock, and hopefully I'll be hearing back from him after that. Also, I wanted to report back to you that you had directed me to try to make contact with some of the online mapping agencies. I am in the deep throngs of discussion of trading emails with MapQuest. So it is a huge bureaucracy, as you can imagine, and I'm kind of in the bureaucracy is all I can report to you on that. I did want to also report to you that the facilitator for the forum that you held on October 2nd for seasonal traffic increases She has contacted me after the November 18th verbal reporting that she did with you. She's contacted me back, and she'll be developing the written report this month and having that for you. And of course, that will be going online as well as a public document immediately, and hopefully that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. I also wanted to report to you that one town event that the town sponsors annually with Runcations is the Festivus 10K run in Southern Shores. That is our one Christmas holiday season event that we participate in. I'm happy to report that the Southern Shores Volunteer Fire Department has also stepped up and is also a major sponsor this year. So the fire department will be having volunteers at watering stations, which should be kind of neat. So we look forward to a big event, and that'll be Saturday, December the 20th. I believe it was a big event last year, and hopefully they'll be just as big this year with the registrations. Mr. Mayor, I believe that's my report for tonight. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions from any council member.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody, any questions? Appreciate it. Thank you. Town attorney?
I don't have anything to report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I have a number of things I want to talk to you about, but I want to start with responding to Mr. Cowell's request about the bridge over the River Kwai, over the canal. This bridge was a recommendation for the council's consideration by the Bike and Pedestrian Plan Committee, and the bridge was part of an alternate bike route through Southern Shores to allow bikers to come up Duckwoods Drive and go through to Fairway Drive and then come back either on Dogwood Trail again, but Dogwood Trail is pretty congested in the summertime, not very safe. So the committee, after a lot of thought and deliberation, decided let's give them one other option, that is put a bridge across from Fairway, which is a private street, over to Beach Street onto private property. It was not something that was set in concrete. It was simply a recommendation by that Bike and Pedestrian Committee. It has not been considered by council. It has not been presented to council in a form we could consider it. My thinking is that it would be, I don't want to use the word, but it's going to be a long time before it can happen, if it happens at all. It's not something we're even considering now. And I think it's been addressed earlier, but I wanted to make sure that it was understood. It was what I call a pie-in-the-sky approach in an effort to avoid the congestion and the traffic on Dogwood Trail. How do we get people on bikes and walkers through town, north to south, without using Dogwood Trail or having Dogwood Trail be the primary route through? And that's why it was presented. Other options were using not Dogwood Trail, but using Duckwoods Drive as a shared roadway, and having come back onto Dogwood at Fairway. But none of these have been set in stone. They're all just options and something for us to consider, and we have not had an opportunity to do that. A couple other things I want to mention. If you were at the meeting with the facilitator we had, the last meeting we had, where we discussed all of our options as far as things we could do and couldn't do, I was tasked with forming a coalition to look into ways we could alleviate some of the vacation traffic. And one of my responsibilities was obviously to deal with talk with the other mayors and the other towns that border us. So last week, I met with the mayor of Kitty Hawk and his police chief. I met with the mayor of Duck and his police chief and town manager. And also at that meeting were our town manager and our police chief. And from that meeting, we determined that there are some things we can do. Then Kitty Hawk has already taken the initiative in some of these things that we can do to primarily in the enforcement area. And they include Kitty Hawk's plan to install a semi-permanent, if you will, sign as you come across the bridge reminding drivers to not block the intersections. The second thing they're going to do is they're going to put additional police enforcement at the intersection of 158 and 12. The third thing they're going to do, and this is a little tricky, but I think I can explain it to you, they're going to limit or eliminate right turns on red on the weekend, on certain hours of the weekends at the westbound intersection of 158 and 12. You know where the right 8 is there, where you turn off to go to the right to come up Highway 12 off 158. Apparently that's a real bottleneck because people coming up from the other direction get in the intersection and stop people from going through the intersection because they're making that right turn even after they aren't supposed to. So they're going to put some signage there as well to no left turns at certain hours of the day on Saturday and Sunday, trying to alleviate some of that. What's the next step? The next step, a lot of this came out of our meeting. We want to get DUC more involved, but DUC has their own plan, their own program, and as you all know, they're more oriented to the tourist traffic than Southern Shores is. We can't change that. We can ask them to be more considerate of us, but that we just can't actually change what they do. That's their livelihood. The question was asked. DUC, as you may know, is planning a pedestrian, biker-friendly modification to their downtown, and it's going to probably slow traffic even a little more than it is now. One of the questions that was asked of the town manager there by another town manager or the police officer was, did DUC consider doing pedestrian flyovers or walkovers over their streets, over their Highway 12, rather than having people walk across that street level? And the response was, yes, they had considered it, but the Americans Disabilities Act prevented them from doing it. They couldn't build ramps far enough. They didn't have room, property, to build ramps far enough north and south to allow that access to take place. They just didn't have the room. It physically wasn't placed for it. As you may know, they're planning a two-lane, one lane north, one lane south, coming through DUC, with traffic calming devices, islands, if you will, in the middle lane through most of the downtown. And then the rest of the right-of-way would be taken up by a biking path or biking trail along both sides of the vehicle roadway, and then a buffer, and then a walking path on the east and west of that. So they're going to use up all their right-of-way, but they have the authority to do that, and they can do it as long as they can find the funding for it. And they're working on funding now. That's not going to help us. The other thing that's not going to help us is the increased traffic. It's going to be going to Corolla because Corolla's got major development plans underway up there for new homes and actually some resort-type hotel, at least one. What's the next step for me as part of this coalition? Reach out to the county first and see if they can furnish some additional enforcement people from the Sheriff's Department, if they will. Reach out to the state for state police help on the weekends, those busy weekends, because it's no fun standing down that intersection for 4 hours at a time, having people throw things at you out of their car window and curse you because you're a policeman trying to do your job. Finally, reach out to the other mayors and the people that rent properties south of us, Kill Devil Hills and Nags Head, because if we can encourage them to advise their renters coming to spend their time a week or two in the summer, and if they're coming from the north or from the northwest, take 95 all the way to North Carolina 64 in Rocky Mount and come across from there. You're going to have another hour and 15, 20 minutes driving time, say, from the Richmond area, but you're going to get here without having to sit in traffic for an hour and a half or 2 hours between Barco and the Currituck and our bridge. So it might be a good trade-off for them to take that route. We're going to try to encourage that. We'll take it as far as we can take it. We know we're going to be limited in what we can and can't do, but we're going to try to pursue as many options as we can to try to reduce our traffic. That's my task, and I'm glad to take it on. I'd be glad to address any questions that you may have after the meeting tonight. I'll stay here a little while if you want to ask me specific questions about things we're doing or not doing. It's no problem at all. For my part, I want to wish each and all of you, each and every one of you, I should say, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I won't see you again before the holidays. Thank you. Mrs. Hess?
I don't have anything else.
Larry?
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The only thing I have is tomorrow at Holy Redeemer, the Red Cross is having a blood drive from 12 to 6 if anybody wants to give a Christmas present to somebody in the form of a pint of blood. So, and the food's good. That's all I got.
Thank you. that's all, we'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.